Hey everyone, I don't know how well you're gonna be able to hear me. I forgot the microphones at home, and I was making sure they were charged up and everything, and came out to do a video, and I realized I forgot the mics. So we're gonna trust the microphone on my phone here, and we'll see what we get. But beautiful day. The sun is out finally. For like almost a week and a half, it's been almost nonstop rain, just cloudy outside, raining, and today's just a beautiful day, beautiful Sunday afternoon. Like I said, there's just beautiful out, and I was sitting there. There's a YouTuber I like to watch, World According to Briggs. And it's just learning about different states and different countries, different worlds, whatever. He just does like little short things about them. Anything from crime, poverty, so on. He triggered something with me that it's bothering me. And what bothered me is the question was top 10 states that want to succeed and become their own country or join another country. And I was shocked to see my home state of Vermont being number 10. I mean, it's kind of on the bottom of the list, but really, number 10. Just the fact that it's on the list kind of bothered me, because I never got that vibe. Now, I lived in Texas for 10 years, maybe a little bit more than 10 years. And all honesty with Texas, that whole vibe was there. They wanted to separate and be their own country. It didn't matter where you went, the vibe was there. Whether they could have legally have done it or not, that's another story. Texas has talked about it for many, many years. But here Vermont even made that kind of a list really just shocked me. And Vermont used to never be that way. Vermont used to be a completely red state. Oh, and if you're wondering why Vermont was with all the reasons for Vermont and other states wanting to separate and join, Canada or Mexico or whatever the case was, it's Trump. It's Trump. Trump is one man. That's all he is, the man. And people need to get over it. You're gonna have presidents you don't like. You're gonna have presidents you're gonna love. Get over it, okay? Life moves on. But that being my little philosophy, you're probably wondering why am I just bothered by the fact that Vermont even made a list of states that wanted to succeed from the states. Well, Vermont used to not. Whoa, hit a patch of mud right there. Vermont used to be a relatively red state for many, many years. I believe it was from the 1850s through the 1960s. Vermont was a guaranteed red state, guaranteed Republican state. From like the 1970s, a slight swing started coming. It was slight, it was nothing heavy, but overall Vermont was a red, right-wing state pretty much up until the 1990s, early 1990, 92 actually. Howard Dean was elected governor, Democrat. He was the one who ushered in civil unions, but so on and so forth. But also, other things had transpired. And by the way, I'm not going in on that with people, and that's a totally different debate. But what's gone on over the years was a shift in economics, a shift in industry, and a shift in population. See, Vermont was very, like I said, very red, but also quite industrious. We had several different industries here. And really through the I'm going to say probably 1700s to the 1800s, there was mining, particularly mining of iron ore, mining of granite and marble. Matter of fact, not too far from where I grew up was Marble Works. Several quarries in the area. Where in this one place, that's what they were. They were a marble factory, and they would clean up marble and sell it. Matter of fact, a lot of Vermont marble went down to the building of the White House. So a lot of industry, a lot of lumber industry, a lot of mining, factories work, and stuff like that. And farming was also a big one. A lot of farming. Agriculture was huge here. You know, you had your occasional sheep farmers, but a lot of dairy farmers. You know, a lot of dairy milk. A lot of my family on my dad's side. So actually, even several on my mom's side were all dairy farmers. So a lot of these industries, they kept people here. You know, this is where you were born and raised, and guess what? This is where you settled down. You had your family. And I really noticed a shift pretty much in the early 1990s when several of my classmates, several of us were finding ourselves having to move out of state to find jobs. If you wanted a halfway decent paying job, you could not live in Vermont. Now, what happened here? Well, some other industries came in. Companies like IBM. I'm sorry, I'm getting bugs running around my head here. A lot of companies like IBM came in, settled in, and you know, we have had other big name companies actually come and start places here in Vermont. With that, they brought in other people who were, you know, well, the phrase that they used when I was doing a little bit of reading on this was more educated people. But I don't know if I want to call them more educated. Maybe they had more technical experience in other fields. But they came to Vermont, and a lot of these people who went to a lot of these different schools, mostly like big Ivy League schools, big colleges, they come with a more liberal agenda, more liberal doctrine embedded into them, and that's what they brought to Vermont. And with that also came more of a concern for the environment. Don't get me wrong, I'm a firm believer that we need to be caring for our environment. If you look in the Bible, where did God place Adam and Eve? He placed them in the garden, the Garden of Eden. That's where he put them. Their job was to take care of the garden. I firmly believe to this day that is our job. We have a responsibility to take care of this planet that we are on, that he put us on. We have that responsibility. And I am not going to sit here and try to say I am an environmentalist. I am more of a conservationist. I do believe, we should not be throwing pollutants into our rivers and lakes and oceans. I think we need to be more careful on the things we do. I don't like K-Cups. I don't buy K-Cups anymore. I used to. I mean, they're wonderful if you need, if you're just getting a single serving, but I actually got a coffee maker that's got a screen in it for single cup servings. And I'm very happy with that. I really am. I think that's better than trying to get a K-Cup, which is, you can use it only once and throw it away, and all that plastic goes into a landfill. But, so I understand the need to take care of the environment. I don't think that should be a liberal thing. Or a conservative thing. I think that should be an everybody thing. But also with that came more of a environmental impact laws that made it very hard for new industries to come into the state, which those industries would have provided more jobs, which would have helped more young individuals to stay here in Vermont, to stay put. And I have several family members who have moved away from Vermont. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Two of my sisters have moved. They One lives over in New York, the other one lives down in Florida. Actually, the oldest, she originally, before she moved to Florida, she was living in New York, and it wasn't just many jobs. I'm very fortunate. I came up here from Texas a few years back just to, my parents are getting older, and I just didn't want to be thousands of miles away if something happened. And granted, we still don't have the greatest relationship, but I was glad I was up here when my father passed away, and my mom's here. I got to go see her today, which that was a good thing. But I just, the change I feel for the state was not for the best. And I'm not going to sit here and talk so much. It's all about the politics. It's not about politics, okay? And I know I kind of said something about civil unions a little bit ago, but that's something to me completely different. That's a spiritual issue, and that is something I'm not going to get into heavy discussions with unless it's on a spiritual level, okay? And I believe what the Bible says about sin. It is a sin. And by the way, if you really want to know what sin is, it's just a separation between you and God. That's all it is. Okay? I don't believe one particular sin gives you an automatic one-way ticket to hell. Okay? All sin does that. Okay? If you think about what Adam and Eve did, all they did was eat some fruit. Something that we consider very, very minor, but you know what? It was disobedience. And that's all it was. That's all it is. Okay? So we're not going to get into that. I just give you a summary. So, but when I was growing up, that is something people would never even have discussed it. It would have never been talked about. And there's just so much now in the state that is normal. Because they have done the switch from all these other industries, from factory, from the mining, to farming. It's all taking a huge shift towards tourism. Okay? I remember years ago, my hometown, there was an artist, and he did this whole thing with pigs. And there were just it's like they just, made these little ceramic statues of pigs, and these businesses would buy them, and they would just paint them and put them out front. It was an art thing. And that was early 2000s. I don't know if they had kept it up past that, because that was just before I moved to Texas. Now, there's some wind. And I'm hoping you guys can hear me over the wind. Like I said, I forgot the microphones. But I just, like I said, tourism is a big thing now. And all these little small factories that were around when I was a kid are no longer here. There was a couple of big woodworking, furniture making shops. They're no longer here. Matter of fact, there's one still here, but they basically specialize more in furniture, like, for college dormitories, stuff that's going to break and it can be replaced. Okay, nothing really high end. But yeah, and the other place was made very expensive high-end furniture. They're gone. There was a paintbrush company there in town. They're gone. There were several other different, there was a plywood factory that's gone. There's there was a milk plant. They did bottled milk. They're gone. These are just stuff off the top of my head. Now, farms, I can count off the top of my head. When I was a kid, there was like 10 fully active farms just in my hometown area. I think there's one or two now. And that's maybe. That's a maybe. I have not checked on one of them. Last I knew, they were still active. But there was another one I haven't driven by it in a while. And last I heard, there wasn't much by way of cows there now. So yeah, dairy farming has kind of gone down, and just all these different industries that kept people together kind of has fizzled out. Mining actually kind of fizzled out long before any of that took place, and it was Like I said, it was just that was a slow thing. I think the Vermont, I think the marble quarry up in Barrie, last I heard, it was still going, but not at the capacity that it was. But anyways, I drove a lot of the local people out. Like I said, a lot of us who just wanted to be able to settle down, have families here, and just live life, no longer able to do that. A lot of people are now forced to move out, and the people who are here are those they got these jobs, either remote work, and so they have a place up here where they do all their remote work, or they're like doctors and lawyers and the such, where they have houses up here and they're temporary homes. Also, religion has kind of taken a bit of a dive, and I know in the Rutland, Vermont, there is a pretty decent sized convent there, and I'm getting the sun in the camera now, so I'm gonna walk over here more into the trees. But there was a convent there for many, many years. They started the hospital there in Rutland, and it eventually moved really to a bigger complex I believe in the 70s. But that has kind of died down. The Catholic Church there, not only did they, you had the convent there, there was a high school that they started, more or less a private high school, and also a small college. And the college, I want to say it was just before, 2016, 2017, maybe somewhere around in there. Might have been 2018, it finally closed the door. They were having problems with accreditation, so they had to shut their doors. I think the high school is struggling. There's just not a lot of people wanting to go, send their kids there much. It's kind of expensive, and they don't want to send their kids there much anymore. So last I heard, it was kind of on the struggling side. But I've also seen a lot of churches shut their doors. The churches that were here when I was a child are no longer here. They shut their doors. Either that or the congregation has shrunk tremendously. The church that I attended when I was in high school, I started going to before I turned 18. They're no longer here. They shut their doors. Although I have seen a small rise in Christian churches in the state over the past several years. That is starting to make a bit of a comeback. People are looking for something. They're starting to realize the things that they were putting their faith into are not sustainable. And I'm going to start walking back to the car because I'm getting eaten alive by bugs. And it is something that we struggle with all the time. I am very fortunate. I'm very blessed to have a job where it's good paying. They're starting to realize the cost of living here. They have no desire to relocate because they are a big corporate. They're an international company. Like I said, they're international. They're having a struggle trying to find workers right now. And I think they kind of know that it's going to cost them, they're going to lose more money than what it's worth to relocate. So they're trying to find different alternatives to help people stay there, to stay working there, not to quit, not to look for other jobs, and also to attract new employees. And they really are. And it's a struggle because people who are living now in the area, and this is not just a Vermont problem, this is a nationwide problem. There's people who just don't want to work anymore. They don't want to work in the factories. They don't want to do work for what seems to be peanuts. And like I said in my last video, just people here who don't, they don't find fulfillment in their job. And I can understand that. I'm going to tell you right now, my job, it's not fulfilling, but I can't rely on my job to have fulfillment. Okay. I have to get that from somewhere else. And that is going to fall into the category of my spiritual life, my faith, doing other activities outside of work. That is what's going to give me fulfillment. It's not going to be the job. Okay, my job helps me pay the bills. I'm lucky now that I'm actually lucky. It's not the word, blessed now that I'm in a position where I'm getting to do my first international travel at the end of the year. I am excited about that. But unfortunately, it's, I don't see a lot of good for my home state right now. I am looking at probably when I get to my retirement years, and I'm about 15 years away from that, I'm going to have to move to a place to where I can afford to live. Okay. I'm actually still looking at trying to find, learn something online that I can do, that I can, do after the age of 65. Because, I don't know if my body is going to physically make it to that point. I don't know if I'm going to continue to work in a factory after 65. I don't know if I'm going to make it to 60. So I'm actually looking for other stuff. I'm looking at YouTube. I am looking, doing work for, possibly going back into ministry. I'm looking at almost going back into medicine, emergency medicine, doing something that I can do to earn just a little extra money in case I am forced to do an early retirement that I really don't want to do. And it does bother me. Okay, it does bother me. It frightens me. But you know what? It is what it is. And I cannot lose sleep over it. I just have to go with the flow, roll with the punches. Okay? And I think that's what a lot of people forget to do. Now, what does all this have to do with Vermont shifting from a red and a blue? Like I said, since you got a new source of industry, which is tourism, you have all the natives people who've actually grown up here. I say native, I'm not meaning like the Native Americans, although they were pushed out many years ago, and they're on some reservations now over in New York State and other parts of the country, which saddens me, but they're still here culturally, and that's that's above my knowledge to get into a story, into talking about that, but it is bothering. I'm saddened that it happened, and but when I talk about the natives, those who were born and raised here, I'm talking multiple generations. I want to say I'm a fifth generation, at least fifth, if not more. I've had relatives who fought in the Civil War. I think we got some relatives that go all the way back to the Revolutionary War. So we got some generations here behind me, and so I know that's probably more than 5 generations. I know, but the fact that the population that was born and raised here can't afford to live here anymore, unless you go and get a very high-end job. And I mean high-end job. I'm not talking about just going to college and getting a bachelor's degree in something. I mean having to fork out the money to get a master's or a doctorate, and it's just troubling. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way for anyone. We all should be able, if we love where we were born and raised, you'd think we should be able to pull it off, but we can't. And those are the changes that have happened in Vermont, probably just during my lifetime. And it's been a slow progression, and it's going to keep going. But I do know it's going to get better. As I say, it's just witnessing what appears to be a resurrection of Christianity in the state. It's going to take some time. It took some time for us to get to where we are now. It's going to take some time to get us to where we need to be. So it's going to be a while. And I don't think Christianity is going to be the cure-all. But it's going to be the start. It's going to be God's working hand. I pray for the state all the time. I pray for us to, not just for the state, but for our country, for the world, for all of us, just to get back to where we need to be in Christ. So, Vermont used to be considered one of the red states. I had a boss one time. He talked about me being from the right-wing conservative state of Vermont, and this was in the mid-90s. And he was talking about this. But it's not like that anymore. Like I said, we now, pretty much blue. Yes, we have a Republican governor, but we have a mostly blue legislator, House, or I can't even say words now, but you get what at some point, I think for the sake of everyone, we gotta start swinging back. Anyways, that's my rant today. I'm not going to sit here and say that the change is all bad. It's not. Like I said, we need to. I think it can get better. I think probably some more. The environmental laws maybe could be loosened or readjusted to allow new industries in, and to allow locals who are young people who are just getting out of high school, who probably cannot afford to go to college, to have a good job. Have a good paying job and not have to leave the place where they were born and raised. I love my state. Okay? I never thought there'd be a day that I would ever say that. And I'm sure you love your home state too. You probably love the place. If you were born, you got to be blessed being born and raised in a single place. Go through elementary school and high school all in the same town and not have to be moving around. I'm sure you consider yourself blessed. Not all of us get to do that. But times change, and we need to roll with the punches sometimes. All of you, God bless, and I'll see you on the next one.